G'day guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Danny Bird. I'm a PJ professional based at the Carbrook Golf Club here in southeast Queensland, Australia. Before we get into today's video, don't forget to make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out as and when we drop videos each and every week. Let's get into today's video. So we're going to be discussing how to set up to the golf ball. It's an area that I talk to all of my in-person students about, probably to the point where they get a little bit bored of it, but it's so crucial. If we want to hit the golf ball well, if we want to be consistent when we do go out on the golf course and play, we need to do so from a set of solid foundations. So let's look at how we should set up to our irons. Okay, so let's start from the ground up. Easiest place to begin looking at getting the correct setup position. So first things first, we want to create a stable and a well-balanced setup. To do that, we want to make sure that our stance width is appropriate. So as I set up to my golf ball here, I'm holding my 7-iron. What I want to do is ensure that my feet are shoulder width apart. And a really great simple checkpoint is to take your golf club and let it hang down from the outside of your shoulder line. And as I let it hang down here, the club head would drop directly over my shoelaces on my right foot and just on the edge of my shoelaces on my left foot. This little checkpoint makes sure that I have my stance wide enough to be able to create rotation and still remain mobile in the golf swing, but also enable that I remain stable and balanced. Too often we see players get the stance too narrow and then they're tilting throughout the swing far too much, or we get far too wide, and whilst it's stable, we certainly don't have the same ability to create rotation. So stance width should be shoulder width apart, and remember, you use the outside of your shoulders as your checkpoint. Okay, so now let's look at the ball position. This is really important. So the clubs in our bag are variable length, so it's really important that we get the ball position correct as part of our setup. If you want to hit the golf ball well, it needs to be in the appropriate spot. So ball position is quite simple, and I use what I call the 3-hand rule. So to start with here, I'm going to get myself set up for my 7-iron. So we've got the wide enough stance, it's nice and stable. My left hand here at address should be just ahead of the golf ball. Now if I take my grip and then I simply lower my left hand down, you'll see that the outside of my left hand should touch the inside of my left thigh. Now that would be hand position number 2 in our setup. We want the left hand to touch the inside of our left thigh. We would use this for our mid irons. So you're talking 8-iron, 7-iron, 6-iron. You possibly could incorporate your 9-iron, but we'd probably stick with the 8-iron through to 6-iron. If we then set ourselves up again, and we imagine that I'm using my pitching wedge here, we'd have the golf ball set up more centralized. Again, the left hand would be just slightly ahead of the golf ball, but as I look down here, my left hand is marginally, as I lower it down, in front of my center line, so in front of the buttons on my shirt and the belt on my buckle. That would be for our shorter club, so we would be looking at 9-iron, pitching wedge, gap wedge, sand wedge, lob wedge from that position. And as we work up into our longer clubs, we want our left hand, and if we imagine this would be, say, my driver or a 3-wood or a hybrid, my left hand should be kind of in line with the golf ball, and as I lowered it down, it would be touching the center of my left thigh. So there we have the left hand being used 3 times to create various ball positions for the clubs that we're using. Very simple, very effective, and very easy to use when out on the golf course. Okay, so now let's look at our knee flex. Now, this is really important because I see far too often players, when they get set up, we have players with either far too much knee flex or nowhere near enough knee flex. So the appropriate amount, based upon studies of some of the best players in the world, is somewhere between 150 degrees and 160 degrees. So if you imagine that if I stood here dead straight, I have a 180-degree angle. I want to create just a very small amount of flex here, which then runs through the back of my leg, where we would measure it from here, and we'd be in about that 150 to 160 degree range. It is a very slight applying of pressure down, and that's how I like to think about it. So when I stand here very neutral, I don't really feel too much pressure in my feet, even though I am standing upright here. But what I'd like to do is just apply some pressure down. And in doing so, I now feel like I've got myself into the appropriate knee flex here. From there, we can begin to look at the upper body tilt. So really simple. I like players to think that to get the appropriate tilt and to ensure we have the appropriate knee flex, I want to have that knee flex to begin with. And then from here, I'm just simply going to let my arms hang down. And I should have the club here, when it hangs down, sitting approximately 1 inch or 2 above my kneecaps. And then from there, I'm actually in a pretty good setup position. Alternatively, to ensure that we've got the appropriate tilt in the upper body here, we just want to let our right arm hang down at address, and it should be able to sit in line with the lower part of the grip here, as we can see. So if I let my right arm just hang down, I'm in a pretty good level of upper body tilt to address the golf ball. So then we get on to how far away should we be standing to address the golf ball. And this is a really simple trick to use to make sure we get this correct. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is place your club so that the sole of the club is sitting flat on the ground. We then take our left hand and we place it on the top of the grip as if we were going to grip the golf club normally. We then get ourselves into our setup position. So we make sure we get our ball position correct, we make sure we get our stance width correct, we get our knee flex, our upper body. Then what we're going to do is we're going to let the right hand here just hang down. So as you can see here, as my right hand hangs down, I'm actually hitting my left hand. So that tells me that I'm probably standing a little bit too far away from the golf ball. So if I shuffle myself in here a little bit more, again, maintaining that the club's still flat to the ground, let my right arm hang down again, and now it's able to slide and slip perfectly onto the golf grip here, which shows me and tells me that I'm quite clearly then the appropriate width away from the golf ball. Okay, so now let's look at getting the grip correct. And this is probably one of the most important things to get correct. If we want to address the golf ball well, provided that we go from the ground up, we will actually find that the grip should be relatively neutral. More often than not, I actually see players with a poor grip due to that being the first thing that they look at. And then as a result of their setup position, their grip just gets increasingly worse over time. So the way we want to grip the golf club, real simple. We're going to take our left hand here, I'm going to hold the club in my right hand. I'm going to place the club between the palm and the lower part of the fingers on my left hand here. So it sits slightly in the palm, slightly in the fingers. I then wrap my fingers around. I then place the pad of my left thumb here directly on top of my fingers. And then when I look down at my grip and I see how my left hand is sitting on the club here, I'm going to see that my thumb is ever so slightly to the side. So if we were to imagine that as I look at you here, I have a clock face of 12 o'clock, I've been at 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock to the side here. My thumb is pointing ever so slightly to the right hand side between 12 and 1 on the grip here. And there's a little tiny V between my index finger and my thumb line, and this is pointing up between my right pec and my right shoulder. So now we know that the left hand's on the grip correctly. Then we take our right hand. And when we get the right hand on the club, guys, I want that to run purely through the fingers. So I'm going to choose an interlocking grip here. We then get the grip running through the right fingers. I then place my right pad thumb on top of my left thumb here, and I apply pressure down. And I like to then squeeze between my thumb and my index finger. I like to squeeze those two together just to create a little bit more stability in my grip. So we get ourselves into a setup position here, and we just apply that little bit of pressure and squeeze. And as I look, my right thumb here is actually pointing ever so slightly to between 11 and 12 on that clock face that we just spoke about. From here I have a nice neutral grip. Quickest, easiest way to test to see how neutral your grip is, take your setup, relax your arms, place the club over your head. From here, just simply pull the club back to where we'd be at setup. And my club face is perfectly square, which means my grip is perfectly square. By simply relaxing your arms over your head and returning the club back to setup, you can check very quickly how good your golf grip actually is. Okay, so the final part for this particular video, and just remember that the video is in no particular order, there's no order of importance, it's just the order in which I've videoed for today. But we're going to look at getting your alignment correct. Now, I can't stress this enough. Most of the lessons I do in person, we are discussing alignment more often than we are not. And when we get a player to align correctly, they instinctively start to maneuver their club face a little bit more functionally, a little bit better. Thing to remember is that as I set up to my target here, if I'm going to aim for those two flags down on the fairway, but I aim my body over to the right hand side and I may be trying to compensate for a hook or a poor motion, all I'm going to do is keep encouraging myself to maneuver my club face back towards the target. Now, more often than not, we're going to take the path of least resistance, the shortest route back to the golf ball, which in this instance would be an over-the-top movement. And I believe for a lot of players that actually stems from the incorrect setup. When I take my in-person students and I get them to line up correctly, we often see that that orientation of the club face makes its way back towards target a little bit more freely. So, quickest, easiest way to align yourself correctly, and the method I've used for over 20 odd years now, is very simple. I'm going to ask you guys to stand behind the golf ball. We're going to look down our target line. I'm going to ask you guys to take the club in your right hand only. I want you to place your right foot level with the golf ball here. You're going to place the club face down. We're now going to see an imaginary line that runs between our club face out to our intended target line. From then, I'm now standing and doing it this way because I'm nice and open, so I can see clearly out of both eyes. We don't want to be stepping in closed off, because then as I look up, I see out of my left eye and I feel like I'm aiming straight, but I'm probably going to be aiming too far to the right. So club face towards target, our right foot is sitting parallel level with our club face here. We're then going to put both feet close together, and now I'm going to see this line along my feet here and my club face here, and then we're simply going to create the stance width. From here, I would then ask you guys to get that left hand on the club here. I'm simply let my right hand hang down. I'm standing too far away, so let's just step in ever so slightly. Right hand hangs down, feeling like I'm in a pretty good spot. And then from here, I'm ready to make my golf swing. So that particular method of lining up has served me well for, say, over 20 plus years. I know that it's likely to serve you guys well too. So guys, as always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch today's video. I really do hope that you've garnered some information out of it, and some of what I've said is going to be helpful to your golf game. As always, please don't forget to like the video if you found it helpful. Make sure that you drop a comment for me, because I'm more than happy, as always stated, to have a discussion in the comment section with you or answer any questions that you might have about today's video. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the videos as and when they drop. And guys, make sure you've hit that little bell so you get the notifications, if you have subscribed, for when the videos get released. You don't want to miss out on what's upcoming. So until next time guys, happy golfing.